Well, let's first start with the history of the cartridge. We're talking about the 9x23mm Largo, and it goes by the name 9x23mm Largo, 9mm Largo, 9mm Bergmann Bayard, which is the people who designed a cartridge and a pistol for it back around 1905, I believe, or 1901 is when it was designed. So this is an old cartridge, or it's called the 9mm Bayard Long. The only countries that used it is the Bergmann Bayard pistol was adopted by the Danish military in the 9mm Bayard Long. The Spanish adopted it or bought some, and something about the design of the Bergmann pistol they didn't like. And actually, you're not going to see many of them because a couple of the nice examples I've seen, I'll have a price tag well over $2,000. So we're not going to be doing a video on that. But the Spanish liked the cartridge, and the Spanish Army and police force adopted, and they call it the 9mm Largo or 9mm Long, and they used it for years. I think I don't know exactly how long until they went to the standard 9mm Luger cartridge, but a lot of their pistols, both Spanish military and Spanish police pistols in that caliber, ended up on the surplus market over the past 40-50 years. And some of the most common guns you will find in this caliber is the Model 400 Astra, this here, which the Spanish Army adopted, and that was the Spanish military pistol for some years. Star made copies or designed guns that were knockoffs of the older Colt style guns. This is very similar to the model 1911, okay, and they made all kinds of variations in different calibers. It'll be the 9mm Largo. They're made in 9mm. You have smaller guns that are made in 380 automatic or whatever, and there's a whole bunch of different variations of this basic pistol, and a lot of them, a majority of them are in 9mm Largo, and they're going to be the most common guns around here in the U.S. you find in that caliber. Now the problem is, I don't know if you can get surplus ammo, but it's when it came in with the pistols, it's, you know, I haven't seen anything or dealt with it, but a lot of it's from the 60s, maybe the 70s, I'm not quite sure. Hornaday and Blazer made 9mm Largo ammo at one point in time, but probably because they didn't sell as much as they expected, they dropped it from their lines. So there was probably the most recent manufacturing, and when you go online and search this, these people, I don't know how old this posting or this thing about the 9mm Largo has been online, but Hornady and them have stopped producing the ammo, and you really can't buy U.S. factory-made ammo right at the moment. But Starline Brass does make the correct 9mm Largo case. We'll sell you the cases for Starline Brass, which means that it's possible to reload the correct cartridge. And another thing on these Spanish pistols, if you look, like here, it'll say 9mm and /38. Same with this. This pistol on the slide has 9mm, and then down below it, I don't know if the 38 was added later. I'm not quite sure what the Spaniards did. I believe that they would take these guns and trade them in for newer models, and then refurbish the guns, and then resell the used firearms, or reissue them, or whatever. I'm not sure, but there was some sort of a program where the guns were returned and reworked. And when they reworked them for the 38 automatic cartridge, which again is another old cartridge that John Browning, when designing the early automatic pistols that Colt used to buy as designs, I think like the 1903 Colt automatic is in the .38 auto caliber. There's a couple of real early versions of these old Browning pistols that were chambered in that .38 automatic. Now the .38 automatic, what was strange about it is the case is the same, the bullet's the same, they just loaded it to a higher pressure level, and that became the .38 Super, which around the 1920s or 1930s, that's when this came on, and they chambered the 1911 A1s in the .38 Super. And this was, at the time, you know, technological leap or a new handgun, something hottest, newest thing, because the 45 gun, or the gun that was chambered in 45 and steel and everything was improving over the years, the gun could handle it. Whereas the older guns, their design and that couldn't. So you had a problem. You had the same exact cartridge that would fit in a gun, but one's loaded at a much higher pressure. The Spanish guns, when they had .38 marked on them, were converted to use the semi-rim. See, the .38 and the .38 Super are semi-rimmed. It means they have an extractor groove, but there's a rim, a flange rim, like a regular .38 Special or pistol cartridge. You know, 38s, 32s, it's a semi-rim cartridge. Also, the .38 Auto had an operating pressure of 26,500 CUP. And .38 Super has gone on to where now in modern times there is another cartridge, the 9x23mm Winchester Auto, which is basically the same cartridge as the Largo, and it's rimless because they found a lot of guys like competing and using the .38 Super and loaded it up. There's .38 Super Plus P and all this other stuff, loaded it up even hotter. So, but that rim caused feeding problems, so they just went and made a rimless cartridge, which is almost identical to Largo, with the exception of it's a few thousand shorter, and the base of the cartridge, the web in that, is made a hell of a lot thicker. And then we go and throw in the 9mm Steyr, which is very similar to the Largo. And a lot of people believe you can just, and you can, get these cartridges to fit inside this gun and go off. So this is where, like, a safety problem, or you find these guns, they're beat up or have problems with the extractor, crack slides and that. I think it's because people are using the wrong ammo. And now when they used to sell them years ago, they tell you, oh yeah, put .38 Super in there or whatever. But then again, when you look at what the Largo is rated at, officially, cartridges of the world and that, it supposedly fires 127 grain bullet, okay, which is almost 130 grains, at a velocity of 1,167 feet per second. That's a .38 Super load. I've tried to replicate this, and you're going into .38 Super territory. So when you usually reload this, all the forums, and there is really no published load data, people tell you to reload it to 124 grain 9mm Luger or low-end .38 Super. But to get those results, you have to go to a mid-range, almost top .38 Super. And in my experimentations, I really had some strange results in that. But you know, that's why you got to kind of, this is really confusing and really complicated, because like people will tell you, at one time you couldn't get 9mm Largo brass, and all the surplus ammo is Bayard and prime, so that there are people that can reload Bayard and primers if you go that route. But another thing people were doing is taking 223 brass and cutting it down and making Largo brass out of that, which is commonly available for the AR-15 rifle. So there are different routes, but Starline does make the proper brass with the proper head stamp, brand new, and probably that's the way to go. Now, I'm not here to cover all the different things because, like people say, even Starline told me to take the 9x23mm super comp brass and I can use it in the Steyr pistol because they didn't have the Steyr brass in stock. It really didn't work out well, and I was trying to substitute it, and I found now that the reloading thing is settled down and you can get just about any brass Starline makes is in stock. So you can get the 9mm Steyr brass. Now a lot of people say, well, you can use either or. Well, there is a slight difference in them. It comes down to the length and the rim diameter. And the thing about the Largo, I don't know if you can see it, but the Largo has a real heavy chamfer back here on the brass. And that has to do with the design of the extractors. Where you see, like if you use 223, that chamfer down there and the rim isn't as heavy. And that's why you can use it, but it may cause problems. You know, the Steyr is, again, very similar, different thickness on the rim, and the chamfer here that goes down into the groove isn't as pronounced as on the Largo brass. It's about the same for the 38 Super Comp. You know, the 38 Super Comp, like I said, other than the fact it's a hair shorter, like about 3/4 thousandths, and the web is thicker for a much higher pressure load, so the case won't split or crack. Okay, that's about the only difference. You could probably easily substitute Super Comp for the Largo. But the problem too is if you make this ammo and you use that brass, and say you sell the gun, dies and brass, and somebody sees that 9x23, which is really a 9x23 Winchester, which is a super powerful load, they may assume that that gun can handle it and put those cartridges in there. And you know, these older guns, these guns are getting quite old. Some of them were made in the 20s. You know, you have a big problem. So that's kind of the history, the mumbo jumbo. In my opinion, this is not a video. I'm not going to cover all, see, because there's all these different variations and ways to work around and not have to buy dies and not have to buy brass and everything. The only thing I could strongly suggest is if you can get new brass in 9mm Largo with the correct head stamp, and you're going to reload Largo, go with that. Same with the Steyr. I found that the Steyr brass is a little bit longer, and when you try to put the Super Comp in there, which is a little bit shorter, there's about a 10 thousandths difference, you're getting into where it's not going to headspace right. Okay, so the brass is available. I suggest, you know, buy the correct brass and start there for the brass, and don't substitute or shoot ammunition other, you know. And then see, the thing is, when people don't reload, they either buy the surplus ammo or they stick it whatever they can find in there. So that's another problem with this caliber. There's too many things you can substitute easily that will fit in the gun, which aren't good for it. Okay, so that's the history and kind of the complexity of this. You know, if you want to cut down brass and form it out of something, you know, it's a lot of work for something you can buy off the shelf. So we'll go over some of the other things that you need, the dies and that, and go on with this video.